The invitation, printed on thick cream-colored paper, had arrived with the subtle authority of a royal decree. It announced the engagement party of William and Kate, a grand affair to be held at a sprawling estate in the English countryside. For weeks, the household had been a whirlwind of preparations. William, ever the composed and dutiful heir, had thrown himself into the details, wanting everything to be perfect for the woman he loved. But beneath his calm exterior, a low hum of anxiety had taken root. It wasn't the pressure of the party or the scrutiny of the press. It was the guest list. His mother, Diana, had been gone for over a decade, but her absence was a physical presence in his life. Her memory was a sacred, private thing, carefully curated in his heart. He had built a wall around it, a protective barrier against the world. Kate, with her gentle grace and understanding, had never tried to scale it. She respected the space, never probing, never pushing. But now, someone else was coming. Someone who threatened to dismantle that wall brick by brick. Her name was Sarah, a woman who had been his mother's most trusted personal aide for the final years of her life. Sarah had been a constant, quiet presence in the background of William's childhood, a witness to both the glittering public appearances and the raw, private pain. After Diana's death, Sarah had vanished from their lives, swallowed by her own grief and the need for a life away from the relentless spotlight. Now, out of the blue, she had requested to come. William had agreed, of course, his sense of duty and lingering affection for the woman who had tried to shield his mother winning out over his unease. He told himself it would be fine. A polite hello, a few shared memories, and that would be it. He was wrong. The party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the elegantly dressed crowd, and the murmur of conversation and the clinking of glasses, a symphony of upper-class celebration. Kate, radiant in a soft blue dress, moved through the guests with practiced ease, her smile warm and genuine. William stayed close to her side, his hand often finding the small of her back, a gesture of both love and quiet support. He was laughing at a story told by a family friend when he felt a light touch on his arm. He turned. It was Sarah. She looked older, the lines on her face deeper, her hair now completely silver. But her eyes, a sharp, intelligent blue, were the same. They held his gaze for a moment, and in them he saw a reflection of a past he tried so hard to keep contained. "William," she said, her voice soft, yet it cut through the party noise with startling clarity. "You look so much like her." The words were a simple truth, but they landed in his chest like a stone in still water, sending ripples of a long-suppressed ache through him. He managed a polite, stiff smile. "Sarah, it's good to see you." The pleasantries that followed were stilted. William introduced her to Kate, who was, as always, gracious and welcoming. But as Sarah spoke to Kate, William watched her. There was something in the way she held herself, a contained intensity, as if she was carrying a weight she was desperate to put down. He saw her glance at him several times, a look of profound pity in her eyes that made his skin crawl. What did she have to pity him for? He was happy. The evening wore on. He tried to lose himself. Evening wore on. He tried to lose himself in the celebration, but Sarah's presence was a persistent shadow. He would catch glimpses of her across the room, standing alone, watching him. It was unsettling. Later, as the party began to wind down and the guests thinned out, William saw Sarah in a quiet corner of the grand hallway, speaking in low, urgent tones to a man he recognized as Alfred, his mother's former head of personal security. Alfred's face was grim, his posture rigid. The conversation was clearly intense. William felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. What could they possibly be discussing with such gravity here, at his engagement party? The feeling of unease that had been a low hum all evening now spiked into a sharp, clear note of alarm. Something was wrong. He didn't know what, but he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the careful, controlled world he had built was about to be irrevocably shattered. The last guests had finally departed, leaving behind the quiet clatter of staff clearing away glasses and the faint scent of perfume and expensive wine. William had excused himself from Kate, pleading a need for some air, but his real purpose was to find Alfred. He found the former guard in the library, a room of dark wood and leather-bound books that always felt like a sanctuary. Alfred was standing by the fireplace, staring into the unlit grate. He turned as William entered, his weathered face creased with a deep, troubled frown. He had served the royal family for decades, a man of unwavering loyalty and discretion. William had never seen him look so uncomfortable. "Alfred," William began, closing the heavy door behind him, "I saw you talking with Sarah. What's going on?" Alfred hesitated, on his gaze dropping to the floor for a moment before meeting William's. "Sir, there's something you need to know. Something Sarah came here to tell you herself. She felt it couldn't wait." A flicker of anger sparked in William. "Couldn't wait? She chose my engagement party to deliver some kind of message?" Alfred held up a placating hand. "It's not like that, William. She's been carrying this for a long time. She thought you had a right to know, especially now, before you marry." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. William's heart began to beat a slow, hard rhythm against his ribs. "Know what? Just tell me." Alfred took a deep breath, then walked over to a small table where a manila envelope lay. He picked it up and handed it to William. It was unsealed. "Sarah asked me to confirm some things, to verify dates and events she remembered. I was able to." He paused, his voice dropping even lower. "It's about your mother, and about Kate's mother." William stared at him, uncomprehending. "Carol? What does my mother have to do with Carol Middleton?" The question was a reflex, his mind refusing to connect the dots. His mother, the Princess of Wales, and Carol, a former flight attendant whose daughter he happened to love. They existed in two completely different worlds. "Open it," Alfred said gently. With numb fingers, William slid the contents of the envelope onto the table. It was a collection of things: a few old, slightly faded photographs, a newspaper clipping, and a handwritten letter on thick, crested paper. His mother's paper. He recognized the looping, elegant handwriting instantly. It was addressed to Sarah. His eyes scanned the page, the words blurring for a moment before snapping into sharp, terrifying focus. "Sarah, you won't believe who I saw today at a charity luncheon. Carol Goldsmith. She was a flight attendant on a few of our trips years ago. We had such a laugh. She's married now with a little girl, I think. She came over to say hello, and we got to talking. It was so strange but wonderful to see a familiar face from those more normal times. We're going to meet for coffee next week. It'll be a lovely trip down memory lane. She's such fun, so down to earth. It's a relief to talk to someone who doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass. We'll write more soon. All my love, D." William read it twice, 3 times. Carol Goldsmith. It looked like the steps of an airplane. It looked like the steps of an airplane, a much younger, smiling Diana in the center, surrounded by cabin crew. And there, standing 2 rows back, was a young woman with a familiar smile. It was Carol, unmistakably her. The other photo was more casual, a slightly blurry shot of 2 women laughing together at a cafe table, Diana and Carol. In the newspaper clipping was a small, insignificant piece from a local paper, mentioning a charity coffee morning hosted by the Princess of Wales and Mrs. Carol Middleton. The date was from over 20 years ago. William felt the world tilt on its axis. The floor seemed to drop away from under him. All these years, he had believed his meeting Kate was a beautiful accident, a university romance, born from friendship and mutual attraction, a love story untainted by the usual complications of his world. But now this. His mother and Kate's mother were not just acquaintances. They were friends. They had a history that went back decades, long before he had ever laid eyes on Kate. A terrifying, dizzying thought began to form in his mind, a monstrous, creeping suspicion he couldn't control. Was any of it real? Was his relationship with Kate a genuine, organic thing, or was it something that had been cultivated, orchestrated? He thought of Carol, her warm, capable, ambitious nature, her fierce devotion to her children. He had always admired her drive. Now, it took on a sinister new light. Had she seen an opportunity all those years ago? Had she nurtured a friendship with a lonely princess, biding her time, waiting for the right moment to place her daughter in the path of her son? The questions hammered at him, each one a physical blow. He thought of Kate, her quiet ambition, her understanding of the role, her seemingly perfect fit for his life. Was it all a performance? A masterful, years-long plan executed by a mother for her daughter? He felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He had to see Sarah. He had to hear it from her own lips. He had to know everything. He scooped the papers back into the envelope, his hands shaking, and without a word to Alfred, he strode out of the library, his mind a roaring tempest of doubt, betrayal, and a gnawing fear for the future he had so confidently planned. He found Sarah in a small sitting room adjacent to the main hall, a cup of cold tea untouched before her. She looked up as he entered, and the pity in her eyes was back, but now it was mixed with a grim resignation. She had known this moment would be brutal. William didn't sit down. He stood before her, the envelope clutched in his white-knuckled grip. "Explain this," he said, his voice hoarse, the command more of a plea. Sarah nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting this. "Your mother and Carol were friends, William, a genuine friendship. It started with chance encounters, grew over shared cups of tea and long private conversations. Your mother valued her immensely. Carol was one of the few people who didn't want anything from her, who just liked her for who she was. Diana could be herself with Carol." William flinched. The words were a knife. Didn't want anything from her. "Then why the secrecy?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Why did I never know about this? Why did Carol never mention it?" "Because your mother asked her not to," Sarah said gently. Their friendship was a small, private treasure for Diana. It was a world away from palaces and protocol. It was her secret garden. She made Carol promise to keep it to herself, to protect it from the press, from the palace, from everyone. Carol kept that promise, even after Diana died. "Or," William countered, and his voice dripping with a cold suspicion he didn't want to feel, "she kept it a secret so she could use it later. Use my mother's memory. Use her daughter." Sarah's face registered a flicker of pain. "I knew you might think that. It's why I hesitated for so long to come forward." But Alfred confirmed the dates, the timeline. Carol and your mother's friendship faded naturally over the years. Diana's life became more complicated, and Carol was busy raising her family. They drifted apart. Yet the last time they spoke was probably a year or so before the crash. She leaned forward, her eyes pleading with him to understand. "There was no grand plan, William. Carol Middleton is not a scheming social climber. She's a woman who once befriended a lonely princess and then, out of respect, kept that friendship a secret for the rest of her life." William paced the room, running a hand through his hair, his mind a chaotic battlefield. Sarah's words made a kind of painful sense. They resonated with the Carol he knew, the woman who, despite the intense scrutiny, had always seemed genuine in her support for him and Kate. But the evidence of the letter, the photos, the timing, it all felt too coincidental. "And what about Kate?" he asked, stopping to face Sarah, his voice cracking on her name. "Did she know? Has she always known?" This was the question that terrified him most. The possibility that the woman he loved, the woman he trusted with his entire being, had been lying to him from the very beginning. Sarah took a long, slow breath. "I don't know," she admitted. "That's the truth. I have no way of knowing what Carol did or did not tell her daughters. I only know what your mother told me and what I saw with my own eyes. The friendship between them was real. What happened between you and Kate, that was your own story to write." The words offered no comfort. They only opened up a new, more terrifying chasm of uncertainty. He had to know. And he had to go to Kate, to confront her with this. The thought of it made him feel physically ill. He imagined the conversation, seeing her face as he laid the evidence before her, watching for the flicker of a lie, the crack in her composure. The woman he was about to marry. He had to go to her now. But as he turned to leave the room, Sarah's voice stopped him. "William," she said softly, "remember, your mother loved you more than anything. She would want you to be happy. Don't let the ghosts of the past destroy the future she would have wanted for you." He didn't turn around. He couldn't. He simply walked out, the envelope a dead weight in his hand, carrying the power to either cement his future or shatter it into a million irreparable pieces. He found Kate in their private suite, slipping out of her heels, a tired but happy smile on her face. She looked up as he entered, and her smile faltered instantly. She saw the ashen color of his face and the turmoil in his eyes. "William, what is it? What's wrong?" She crossed the room to him, her hand reaching for his arm, but he flinched away from her touch. The small, involuntary movement hit Kate like a slap. She stepped back, her own face now pale with confusion and a dawning dread. "Kate," he began, his voice sounding strange and distant to his own ears. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." He pulled the photograph from the envelope, then the one of Diana and Carol laughing at the cafe, and held it out to her. "Do you know who that is?" Kate took the photo, her brow furrowing. She studied it for a long moment, then her eyes widened in shock. That's my mother, with..." She looked up at him, her expression one of pure, uncomprehending astonishment. "With your mother? William, I've never seen this picture before. Where did you get this?" He watched her carefully, searching for any sign of deception. He saw only shock. "Ever met?" Kate shook her head slowly. ever met? Kate shook her head slowly, the photo trembling in her hand. No, never. I knew she had worked as a flight attendant, of course, but she never said anything about knowing the princess. Why would she keep something like that a secret? The question was innocent, bewildered. It was the exact question William had been asking himself. That's what I'm trying to understand, he said, his voice laced with a bitter weariness. He took the photo back, looking from her face to the image of their laughing mothers. Two women, sharing a private joke, completely unaware that their children would one day fall in love. It could be the most beautiful, poetic coincidence in the world. Or it could be the foundation of an elaborate, decades-long deception. Kate, I need you to think. Or was there ever a moment? A comment your mother made when we first started dating? Anything at all that might have hinted she knew more than she was letting on? Kate's eyes filled with tears, not of guilt, but of a painful confusion. She was being asked to defend herself against a charge she didn't understand, to account for a secret her mother had kept from her too. No, William, there was nothing. When I first told her about you, she was happy for me, but she was just my mom. I supportive and excited. There was no scheme. There was no agenda. This is as much a shock to me as it is to you. Her tears, her bewildered honesty, should have soothed him. A part of him, the part that loved her, wanted to believe her with every fiber of his being. But the suspicion was a poison now, coursing through his veins, tainting everything. He thought of all the times Carol had offered them advice, gently guided them, been such a steady, present force in their lives. Had it all been strategy? Was Kate, even now, unwittingly playing a part written for her long ago? He looked at the envelope, still heavy with the letter and the other photographs. He hadn't shown her the letter yet. The one where his mother called Carol such fun and a relief. The intimacy of it, the sheer normalcy, was somehow the most damning piece of evidence of all. It proved a closeness that Carol had actively hidden, and in William's current state of mind, a secret kept felt exactly the same as a lie told. He couldn't look at Kate. He couldn't offer her the comfort she so clearly needed. The chasm between them, opened just an hour ago, now felt like an unbridgeable ocean. I need to be alone, he said, his voice hollow. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving Kate standing there, alone. The photograph of their mother's forgotten friendship clutched in her hand, her own future with the man she loved hanging by a thread. But the engagement party was over. The real battle had just begun. The silence in the suite after William left was deafening. Kate stood frozen, the photograph a cold weight in her hand. Her mind raced, trying to assemble the fragments of this horrifying new reality. Her mother and Princess Diana. Friends. The word felt foreign, impossible. She thought back to her childhood, searching for any missed clue, any whispered phone call or hurriedly hidden photograph. There was nothing. And her mother's life was an open book, filled with school runs, family holidays, and the steady, loving management of their family business. This secret, if true, was a complete anomaly, a profound betrayal of the trust that was the bedrock of their relationship. A new emotion, sharper than confusion, began to pierce through her shock, a cold, hard anger. Not at William, whose pain she could see was genuine and devastating, but at her mother. Carol had some explaining to do. It was urgent. Carol, sensing the gravity in her voice, asked her to come to London immediately. It was urgent. Carol, sensing the gravity in her daughter's tone, didn't ask questions. She was at Kate's apartment within a few hours. The moment Carol walked in, Kate didn't greet her. She simply held up the photograph. The look that crossed Carol Middleton's face was one Kate had never seen before. It was a complex mixture of shock, nostalgia, and a deep, weary sadness. She walked slowly to the sofa and sat down, her eyes fixed on the image. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice quiet. "From William," Kate said, her own voice trembling with a confusing blend of anger and hurt. "He got it from Sarah, one of Diana's old aides. It seems you two were quite close, so close that you wrote letters to each other, so close that you met for coffee and laughed together. So close, Mum, that you were friends with the Princess of Wales, and you I'd ever thought to mention it to me. Not once. Not even when I started dating her son." Carol closed her eyes for a moment as if bracing herself for a blow. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you, Katie. 1,000 times I wanted to, but I gave my word." "Your word?" Kate's voice rose incredulously. "To whom? A woman who has been dead for over a decade? Anyone to know. It was her one small slice, anyone to know. It was her one small slice of normal life. She made me promise on everything I held dear to keep our friendship private. She was terrified it would be twisted by the press, used against her, or that people would swarm me trying to get to her through me. I kept that promise. After she died, it felt like the only thing I had left of her. That secret. It was a sacred trust." She looked up at her daughter, her eyes pleading for understanding. "And then, you came home from university and told us you were dating a boy named William. A sweet, kind, handsome boy. A boy who, by some impossible, beautiful twist of fate, was her son." Kate sank into a chair opposite her mother, the anger draining out of her, replaced by a profound sense of unreality. "So when we started dating, you knew who his mother was to you. You knew the whole time." "Yes," Carol whispered. "I knew. And it was the most wonderful and terrifying secret I've ever had to keep. I watched you fall in love with him, and I fell in love with him a little bit myself, because he was her son. I saw flashes of her in him. His kindness, his sense of duty, the sadness that sometimes lingers in his eyes. It was like getting a small piece of her back. But I couldn't say anything. Oh, how could I? It would have changed everything. It would have made your relationship about me and Diana, not about you and William." Kate shook her head, trying to process the enormity of it. "He thinks it's a setup, Mum. He thinks you planned this, that you pushed me towards him, used your connection to his mother to land him like some kind of prize." The accusation hung in the air, ugly and painful. Carol flinched as if she'd been struck. "No," she breathed, the word full of anguish. "Oh, Katie, no." "Is that what he believes?" "He doesn't know what to believe," Kate said, her own tears falling now. "He's hurt and confused, and I can't even blame him. From where he's standing, it looks like a massive conspiracy." Carol reached out and took her daughter's hand. Her grip was strong, urgent. "Then you have to tell him the truth. The whole truth. Not my truth or Diana's truth, but your truth. You have to make him see that your love for him is yours alone." It was born in a university dorm room, over bad coffee and long conversations, not in some secret pact made years ago. Our history is just that, history. It's a prologue to your story, not the story itself. You have to go to him, Kate. Don't let this destroy what you have. Fight for it. Kate looked into her mother's eyes and saw not a schemer, but a woman who had been carrying a heavy, lonely burden of silence for decades, all to protect a friend, and later, and to protect her daughter's chance at happiness. The anger was gone, replaced by a fierce protective love for the man she wanted to marry. Her mother was right. This wasn't about Carol and Diana. It was about her and William, and she was not going to let the ghosts of the past win. Dawn was breaking over London, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold, a stark contrast to the turmoil in William's heart. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night walking the halls of the palace, on a restless spirit in his own home, the manila envelope his constant, tormenting companion. He had read the letter so many times he had memorized it. He had stared at the photographs until the faces blurred. He had constructed and deconstructed 100 different scenarios, each one ending with the same bitter taste of betrayal. He was standing on a balcony, the cold morning air biting at his skin, when he heard a soft knock on the door to his private study. He didn't answer. But the door opened anyway. Kate stepped inside. She looked as exhausted as he felt, her eyes red-rimmed, but there was a quiet strength in her posture that he hadn't seen before. She was holding the photograph he had left with her. She didn't speak at first. She walked over to him and stood by his side on the balcony, looking out at the waking city. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the only sound the distant hum of early morning traffic. Finally, Kate spoke, her voice soft but clear. I saw my mother last night." William didn't look at her, his jaw tightening. And she told me everything," Kate continued, "about her friendship with your mother, about the promise she made to keep it secret, about how she kept that promise for over 20 years, even from me, even from my sisters." She paused, turning to face him. "She told me that when I came home and told her I was dating you, she was stunned. She said it felt like the most incredible, impossible gift. But to see her friend's son, the little boy she remembered from photographs, growing into the man I loved, she said she saw your mother in you every single day, and it brought her both joy and a profound private sadness." William finally turned to look at her. His eyes were red-rimmed and weary, but the hard, suspicious glint in them had softened, just a fraction. "Why didn't she just tell us, Kate? At any point? Why all the secrecy?" "Because she was terrified of this exact moment," Kate said honestly. "Terrified that it would look like exactly what you think it is. A plan. A scheme. She didn't want our relationship to be about her and Diana. She wanted it to be about us. Just us." She took a step closer to him, her eyes searching his. "William, I love you. I have loved you since we were students, sharing a cheap pizza in my cramped flat, arguing about some ridiculous art history lecture. I loved you before I knew your title, before I understood the world you lived in. My feelings for you have nothing to do with a friendship our mothers had before we were even born. That is my truth. It's the only truth I have to give you." He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the exhaustion, the pain. But most of all, he saw the unwavering honesty in her eyes. He thought of all the moments they had shared, the quiet study sessions, the laughter on holiday, and the way she held his hand during difficult public events, the comfort of her presence in the silent, lonely hours. Could all of that be a lie? Could anyone, even the most skilled actress, fake that level of connection for so many years? He didn't think so. The poison of suspicion began to slowly, painfully, drain away, replaced by a deep, aching relief. And with the relief came a wave of guilt. He had accused her, in his heart, of the worst kind of betrayal. Then he had let the ghosts of the past poison the most precious thing in his present. He reached out and took her hand. It was warm and real in his. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Kate. I was so blindsided. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't know what to think. I let the fear take over." Kate squeezed his hand, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I know. I understand. It's a lot to process. But we're a team, William. We have to face things like this together." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, burying his face in her hair. The future, which had seemed so fractured just hours ago, suddenly felt whole again. It was different now, richer and more complex, layered with the history of two mothers who had found a moment of friendship in their complicated lives. Their love story wasn't just their own. It was, in a way, a continuation, a beautiful, an unexpected epilogue to a friendship cut tragically short. He still had questions for Carol, conversations to be had. But they would be had as a family, not as accuser and accused. He had almost let the past destroy his future. He held Kate tighter, silently vowing he would never make that mistake again. The first light of the sun broke fully over the horizon, bathing them both in its warm, golden glow.